And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Stephen Kennedy, who's going to tell us a little bit about what they do in Torness and the nuclear world. And please give him a warm hand.
Firstly, good morning. Picking up on what Neil rightly said, the nuclear industry historically has been very insular, and we only tend to look within ourselves for our organisational learning. And it's only now when we start focusing on attitudinal and behavioural issues, we recognise that every industry has the same problems. So why stick within the nuclear industry? Why stay within our own skill set? Because there's only so much learning and value that can be taken from that. And secondly, thank you for inviting me here today. It's very important for us in the nuclear industry to share our learning, to share our experience and start expanding, because it's all about continuous improvement and performance improvement. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll be talking about the role of human factors in the nuclear industry and then now error prevention tools that we use at our stations. So I'll introduce myself a little bit further. So I'm Stephen Kennedy. I am the Human Performance Lead at Torness Nuclear Power Station. I've been EDF for 9 years. So Torness in all its splendour. So Torness is a nuclear power station 33 miles from the east coast, from Edinburgh and the east coast of Scotland, and is capable of supplying electricity to over 2 million UK homes. We have 2 advanced gas-cooled reactors with a total supply to the national grid of 1190 megawatts. And we use carbon dioxide gas as a coolant. So we started construction in 1980 and we finished and started generating in 1988. Because we have advanced gas-cooled reactors, it takes a lot of money to build them, and that's why we don't build them anymore. A lot of our fleet, we have 8 nuclear power stations in the UK. There's ourselves and Haitian, which have advanced gas-cooled reactors. The rest are a combination of PWRs and other technologies, pressure waterized reactors. So our estimated end of generation is 2030. We're now looking to extend that even further based on our graphite core resilience. And we employ 550 full-time EDF Energy employees and 180 full-time contract partners. So to put that into context, 2 weeks ago, I spent a week in the Ukraine on a technical support mission. So we've got 2 nuclear reactors and we employ about 750 people. The station in Ukraine had 4 nuclear reactors and employed 8,000 people. At first I thought they were joking. 8,000 people. They have over 1,000 people in leadership roles. Just puts things a little bit of context for you. So, in the nuclear industry, human factors is a wide-ranging discipline that involves the application of known human capabilities and characteristics to the design, assessment and optimization of the working environment, including equipment, system and jobs. Human factors refers to environmental, organisational and job factors and human and individual characteristics which influence behaviour at work in a way which can affect health and safety. I think if we focus on this slide for a minute, we need to be sort of clear and open and honest. Yes, we are, as an industry, highly technically proficient. We have to be. Because if we get it wrong, as you've seen from Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, things are catastrophic. But in that has its own problems as well, because we have been guilty in the past of trying to solve behavioural and attitudinal problems from an engineering perspective. We try and engineer things out because we're good at that and we're confident in that. We'll amend procedures, we'll retrain people, but as you'll all be aware, they're only antecedents. The bottom line is we need people to make the right decision at the right times. We need them to make an informed judgment in the real time. So, human factors. Human factors is concerned with the science of understanding and the properties of human capability and applying this understanding to the design, development and deployment of systems and services. Human performance, where I come in, is the tools and techniques that focus on individual and team leadership coaching, nuclear and professional training. We have 10 human performance tools. There's a lot more human performance tools, okay? We use the term human performance in a much wider way than the EDF Energy's human performance program. Right, the simple way to view human factors is to think about 3 aspects. Okay, we have the individual, we have the people performing the task, who is doing the task, and their individual competence. We have the job, what we're asking them to do, because we have been, again, guilty in the past, and we're really good at telling people what to do and how we want them to do it. It's only recently we've started focusing on the context and the why it's important, why we need a deeper understanding. And obviously the organisation as well, where they are working, the organisation, its attributes. They all influence and have an influence on each other and should therefore not be considered in isolation. We have a central human factors group, and at first, again, being insular, the stations tried to solve their own problems because, again, we're highly technical, we're highly proficient. Why can't we solve our own problems? And we'll look within our own industry, but we still had recurring problems, recurring issues. So the human factors for us is more and more important day by day. So understanding human error. Human errors are not random and take recurrent and predictable forms. We're human, we make mistakes. Humans are fallible. We have a good understanding of human error and how to reduce them, which can be considered under 3 headings: job factors, individual factors, organisation and management factors. The relative importance of these factors has been determined by experimentation and observation. So, as a fleet, our human factors team support the nuclear safety case. The nuclear safety case is everything to a nuclear power station. It's why we generate, it's how we generate, and it's challenged constantly and consistently. They take part in feasibility and achievement of actions, human factors in design, shift work and management of fatigue, human and organisational factors. Right, so I've already mentioned the 10 human performance error prevention tools. So these are based on best practice from INPO and WANO. So INPO, Institute of Nuclear Power Operation, and it was formed in 1979 by the US nuclear power industry in response to 3 Mile Island. And a little bit later on we have WANO, the World Association of Nuclear Operators, and it was formed in 1999 because of the European disaster of Chernobyl. Right, as I said, we have 10, and we'll go through them one by one. So, as you can see by that slide, we have what we call it is nuclear jewellery. We have lanyards, and this is a card. We expect all our staff members to carry around with them at any one time, just to remind them of our 10 error prevention tools. So the first one on the list is pre-job briefing. So for every task that's carried out in a nuclear power station, there are many. We'll start with the pre-job brief, and this is perhaps the most powerful tool. Done well, a pre-job brief will help everyone to identify possible error precursors and identify which tools and techniques we can use to reduce the chance of error. So everybody involved in a task will sit together with the leader and discuss the task in hand. So why do we do them? To ensure that everyone preparing to do a task or activity has the necessary information to predict and prevent errors. Again, it's about acting with informed judgment. It's about being conscious of your actions, the ramifications if it goes wrong, and understanding the system as well. And it must be conducted before every task. We have different types of brief depending on the risk factor. And again, there's another card we ask them to carry around. So we have a self-brief, which is self-delivered for a very low-risk task. What do I need to do to carry out this task safely and successfully? And then consider a post-job debrief. The green card brief is the most common one. 99% of tasks carry a green card brief, where you receive a verbal brief. We ask the 5 key questions, and then again, consider a post-job debrief. The written brief is for a risk-laden task. We call them critical tasks. So it's prepared beforehand. You have a pro forma to follow. Industrial learning and operational experience is a factor, and discussed. Have we done this job before? What went well? What went wrong? What have we done about it for next time? And we have the appropriate level of detail. And then we have a written post-job debrief. So the post-job debrief just basically revolves around complications that have occurred, if any improvements have been identified, and it's written down and recorded for the next time a task is carried out, and attendance is expected from all personnel involved in the task. Everybody in the task has to be there to share their learning and their knowledge for next time. It's essential that the strengths and opportunities for improvement are carefully detailed to ensure the subsequent jobs can benefit from the experience an organisation continues to learn. So we capture the lessons learned. We identify unanticipated conditions. We identify flawed defences. Did the human performance error prevention tools help us? Were they a barrier? We identify error precursors, and obviously we identify latent organisational weaknesses. Has anybody heard of the twin model? No? It's a model we're using more continually now. It's based on task demands, the work environment, individual capabilities, and people, and the nature of the work. So again, it can form a part of your pre-job brief and obviously the post-job debrief. So I've already mentioned it before, OPEX as we call it, operational experience, and again, and I will emphasise that we've been very guilty of looking internally for operational experience because it's a nuclear industry, there's only so many people operating, so we'll get our learning from there. But again, as we factor more about attitudes and behaviours, every industry has issues. Every industry will continue to have issues, so we need to expand our knowledge and expand our learning. So that's why operational experience to us is absolutely vital. As you'll appreciate, the nuclear industry, there's a procedure for everything. Every task we do has a procedure, from the minimal, routine, low-risk tasks to the critical tasks we've already discussed. Everything has a procedure. Basically because it's a regulatory requirement for ourselves. They can reduce human error and the likelihood of unwanted outcomes if written correctly. Ensure that tasks are completed safely and correctly without shortcuts and workarounds. That's about quality and making sure the task is completed the same every time. And reduces the risk of injury or damage to the public, personnel, plant or the environment. So, STAR, self-checking. Right, basically STAR is an acronym for stop, think, act and review. Okay, and let's be honest about this now. The human performance tools basically form one purpose, it's to make you pause. It's to make you think. It's about making the right decision at the right time. So first we stop. Pause to focus on the task you're about to perform. Think. The brain makes mistakes, the brain cuts corners. It wants the easy route, it wants the easy way out. It'll fill in the dots for you, you only see 2 letters in each word, and if you let it, the brain will trick you. So we've done a lot of work around System 1 and System 2 thinking. So System 1's automatic pilot, and the question we asked, and the question asked today is, who remembers driving here today? The route they took, how many red cars they passed? I say probably no one. That's System 1, automatic pilot. And that's a type of thinking where you will cut corners, where you will, if you don't stop, pause and refocus, you will have an issue, because everything we do is error likely situations. System 2 is the higher cognitive thinking. Am I on the right piece of plant? Have I had a pre-job brief? Do I understand what's to be achieved? And that's where we want our guys. So you consider what actions you would be required if the unexpected occurs. Have a contingency plan. Have discussed the contingency plan. And if you're unsure, stop. Don't guess. Stop. Act. Follow the relevant guidance, procedure, policy, and other engineering guidance. Perform planned actions for the specific activity and use the appropriate tools, both hardware and soft. Another thing we do is point, touch, and verbalise. Everybody heard of point, touch, and verbalise? So we did have an issue in the past with people working on the wrong piece of plant, because lots of our plants are similar. We have essential services buildings, and there's 4 on the plant, and they all look absolutely the same. You wouldn't know which one you were in. All the labelling is very similar. Again, it could be just 2 letters or 2 numbers are different. And if you're looking for 3.3 kV, you see 3.3 kV, you think you're on the right piece of kit. So what we ask them to do now is literally point at the label, touch the label, and verbalise it before they start work, to confirm to themselves they're on the right piece of plant. And we got a lot of kickback with that, because you get people, and it's human nature again, where they felt stupid doing it. They felt like an idiot. They're in a room by themselves, basically talking to themselves. And you can be surprised how many people don't want to do it, but it absolutely works. It's a right hand, left hand brain thing. It's self-confirmation. It's a vital part in the STAR process. Questioning attitude. Now that sounds really simple, because we work on a nuclear power station, it's important. We all know the importance of it. We all know the importance and potential if it goes wrong. Again, it's very difficult to get to embed questioning attitude, because questioning attitude can be based on experience. So if you're a person who's just served their time as an apprentice, they're now a fully fledged technician, what can I base my question attitude on? Not a great deal. It's having a healthy unease. It's about validating assumptions, because complacency is dangerous. We have a lot of talk. We've done this task. We might do a task weekly, and we do it every week of the year, every year. So some technicians have done it 30, 40, 50, 60 times, and it's the same task week in, week out. But we never assume, because complacency is a killer. And approach all tasks with a healthy unease. Raise concerns before starting work and make sure they're resolved, i.e. in the pre-job brief. Question unsafe behaviours and situations. And basically trust your gut feel. If it doesn't feel right, 99% of the time it's not. Trust yourself and trust your instincts, but trust them to stop, not to continue. And always stop when unsure. Peer checking. This is a useful technique to prevent active errors. It's a second person check in parallel to make sure you are going to do the right thing before you take an action. So that might be your work colleague. Again, if you're unsure, ask, could be your leader, your supervisor, or ask a work colleague, just to confirm again. You point, touched, and verbalised on the right piece of kit. You've got the right procedure. You've got the right tools. You've been set up for success. And it's particularly useful before critical steps, i.e. the point of no return. So we have a process at the station where we call it peer-to-peer coaching, where we have a database. So our expectation is that all our staff will record their peer-to-peer coaching, because we know it goes on, but we need to record it, we need to learn from it. Right. Independent verification is slightly different. And this is a good technique to prevent latent errors. It's less useful when you want to prevent active errors, because it will be too late. So basically, for argument's sake, if we allow some of our technicians to provide isolations on 415 volt supplies for short duration tasks, for argument's sake, you're changing the belts on a fan, HMV fan, they're allowed to isolate. But at the pre-job brief, they will have a form, an approved procedure. So they will go and isolate. They'll point, touch, verbalise, have the pre-job brief, isolate. Okay, but then someone totally independent from the task selected by the team leader will go and independently verify. So yes, it is a second check, but it's totally independent. And it's different from a peer check. And it says that it's useful for plant alignment and amending documents, i.e. proofreading for our knowledge workers. So we have peer checking and an IV, or independent verification, if you feel we need it. Clear communications. So we have a lot of radios, we have a lot of phones, but there's no visible body language, so we need to be accurate with our words and use our voice to reinforce the message. Clear communications are meant to ensure that the intended message is properly received. And as you understand, clear communications are always crucial when miscommunication can result in a significant error. Again, we're heavily reliant on the phonetic alphabet. We use three-way communications, especially over the radio and the phone and even face-to-face. You will communicate, you will have that repeated back to you, and then you'll confirm it as correct. So basically, clear communication techniques, firstly, eliminate distractions. Be absolutely clear on the message you want to transmit and the message you want to be understood. Because as you'll all know, what you hear sometimes is not the intended message, or you'll put your own perception on it. So be absolutely clear, confirm and keep confirming until it's fully understood. Obtain visual contact where possible. Clearly identify the sender and the receiver. Be very clear and very concise. Avoid words which could be misinterpreted. And believe me, as an Englishman living in Scotland, that happens a lot, especially over the radio. Use phonetics when transmitting alphanumeric information, and obtain verification from the receiver that the message is understood, i.e. your three-way communications. It sounds quite onerous, but there's a high level of common sense and error reduction in it, and it's absolutely vital. Coaching. So when I say the word coaching, what do you think I mean? What's coaching to you? Anyone got any ideas? Any thoughts? No? Go on.
If I use it from a footballing analogy, you give someone a task to do, they do it, and then you give them feedback on how successful they were, using various techniques in terms of some negative to start with, but positive at the end of it, as to what that might be, for required improvement.
Absolutely right, thank you. So we have a lot of discussions about coaching. Some people like the word coaching, some people don't. Coaching is about understanding and support. Okay, it's about being out there with your colleagues, with your team members, your supervisors, managers, and helping them to understand what you do and why you're doing it. And if there's any level of support you require, that's the time to have the conversation. So there's two levels to the coaching we have at EDF. Okay, we have coaching as a leadership style. And it's about spending time with your team members in the field. Leaders should aim to adopt the coaching style. It is simply a style of conversation which encourages an open and productive two-way dialogue. Again, it's not coaching, it's support and understanding. How can I help? We're here to help. We're not there to observe you. It's not a team sport. I'm not there with a clipboard taking notes. Get me involved. Let me help. Help me understand. And it leads to an environment where team members feel that he or she can safely share information with the leader without fear of judgment, retribution, or blame. Not a lot of people believe that, the nuclear power station. We're very big on openness and honesty, which goes totally against the insular nature of our industry, but we are. That's all we want. At the very minimum, just be open and honest with us. Tell us how you're feeling, tell us what you need, tell us how we can support, tell us how we can help. And we'll do everything we can to support and help you. Active listening is a key element of the coaching style. It's not just about what you're told, it's the non-verbal as well. Sometimes it's about what you're not being told. So just taking the time to understand, making them feel important, having a little bit of empathy, and making them your sole focus for that 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And again, as rightly said, it's about the appropriate feedback. There might be areas for improvement, but it's not negative. It's not discussed negatively. It's all about positive and positive reinforcement, how we can get better. And it's a two-way street. There might be things I can improve on. There's always things I can improve on. I'm no expert. The only thing I'm an expert in is my own opinion and my own performance. Everybody's responsible for their own, and it's allowing me to discuss that with you and for me to help you, and you can help me. So time in the field is a crucial and integral part of the leadership role. Sharing and discussing their personal standards and expectations and providing staff members with every opportunity to be open and honest and to share their personal experience of the day-to-day challenges of the job. There might be something I've never considered. I was observing, coaching or spending time with a leader a couple of weeks ago, and it's a task I'd never observed before or been involved with before. It was on one of our safety systems, and in 5 or 10 minutes I learnt more than I had in the 9 years I've been there before. Things I'd never even considered. Again, I'm no expert, but on the back of that we learned together and things have improved. So it's continuous learning for all of us. Yeah, okay, I'm technically very proficient. Yeah, I am. But human performance is everything we do and how we do it. It's an emotion, it's a thought, it's another emotion, and it's a decision. That's human performance 101. It's about emotional intelligence and how we can support that. If you're in a good place, you feel supported, you feel empathy, you will make the right decision. If we can't help you manage your own emotions and manage our own and be non-biased, then, okay. And the regular presence of leaders in the field has a positive impact on team members' morale, motivation, as well as the culture of an organisation. We need to support everybody. Everybody needs to support everybody. That's the bottom line. It's about support and understanding. So basically, in short, time in the field is whenever leaders take the time to look at any part of the business with an eyes wide open approach, a real thirst for knowledge, a healthy unease, and a questioning attitude. And basically we all learn together. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. If I could invite Neil back up to join Stephen on our tubs, if you like, and we'll get some questions and answers going. Whilst you're all thinking about your questions, which you all are, I'll kick things off with a quick question to Stephen. You mentioned in your slides that you do a pre-event and post-event debrief of the task at hand. Is that recorded formally, or is it more of a verbal conversation? Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's again, it's dependent on the task. If it's a critical task, the pre-job brief is recorded and a post-job debrief is recorded. What we ask leaders to do on our more regular routine tasks is if there's anything from a learning perspective that's captured, then they will record it as well. We have what we call a condition report process, which where anyone on the station can raise a condition report. So basically it's along the lines of what the expectation is, what the gap to excellence is, what you have done and what you could do to close that gap for next time, and any additional support you need. So we have our critical pre-job briefs, which are recorded, and the post-job debriefs are recorded. We support that with our condition report process.
Is that a legal requirement, or is it just a good practice?
It's a good practice.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Oh, it was a microphone coming.
Thanks very much. My name's Jim Finn. I'm one of the safety coaches in the Chevron fields, Captain fields. There's a question that really appeals to me here. Speaking about what you do with that information, what's the driver for people to go and review that, those best practices that have been captured and lessons learned?
So for us, the key driver is obviously continuous improvement and obviously error reduction. So what we do, our condition reports, we get on average maybe 40 or 50 a day. So each day we have a screening meeting, which these condition reports are given a priority from 1 to 5. And then assigned to a department. So priority 1, priority 2 are quite significant. So that might require further investigation to get down to a root cause. And we have 3 levels of investigation based on significant, adverse and minor. So that's so significant might be you'll get a team together and they might spend 4 to 5 weeks investigating, trying to get to establish the root cause and the corrective actions. So that's for the condition report process. For our coaching, we have leadership coaching reviews. So each department, when their leaders spend time in the field, they record it. And then on a monthly basis, they'll have a meeting where they discuss it and they'll look at any strengths for the month, any areas for improvement. And that lends itself to establishing focus areas for the next month's coaching or the next month's time in the field. So every department on every station has a leadership coaching review, which feeds into the performance improvement department, which I'm part of. So we look at all this information again, and then we have a management leadership coaching review, who gets a very high level sort of précis of the station's performance over the month. And again, that can drive focuses coming down, and also it'll drive focuses going up. So it's a holistic sort of leadership coaching review process, which is separate from the condition report process, but it is an input to it.
Okay, I've got that. But the for an individual technician, say, looking at lessons learned from a previous job scope, what would be his driver to go and do that? Well, what mechanism is in place to make him look at that lesson?
It's an expectation. So, again, as departmentally, it'll be reviewed, and also the individual teams will review it as well, which will then input into department. We're very heavy on organisational learning and continuous improvement, so they are expected and driven to reflect on their own work and the work of their peers and learn together.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, I've got one down here.
Yeah, it's just a follow-on from that question, I guess. So you mentioned there's an expectation. So how is that expectation communicated into the workforce?
The expectation is communicated by the leaders. As I said, it's part of when we look at every role at the station, excuse me, we'll have a role training profile, and human performance is a big part of that role training profile about competencies and human performance training. And at the human performance training stage, we embed the expectation from a leadership perspective, from performance improvement perspective, that you will coach your peers, you will record it, you will reflect on it, and you will learn from it. So it's top to bottom. It's an expectation.
I've got a question in the far corner.
So I guess sort of following on the same theme of the last couple of questions, it sounds like you've got a pretty advanced kind of culture within your station. I was just wondering how you see that across the nuclear industry, and what you're good at sharing lessons within your own station. How is that across industry? Because I think that's something in the oil and gas industry we're not always great at, is sharing lessons.
I think it's I'll have to fall on my sword for this one, but as I said before, we have been very insular. So we do share, all stations have OPEX coordinators, so organisational learning coordinators, which we share within our fleet. We also have our corrective action process, which is based on our CR process and about making things better for next time. Coordinators we share within our fleet. We're only now, one of the reasons I'm here today is helping me learn, and I think we're at a stage now where, if we're honest, that we need to start looking outside of ourselves and starting to help and support and get additional help and support for us, because yeah, it might seem fairly advanced, but I'm sure we can improve on it.
So I'll add just a little bit of colour, perhaps, that having spent some time with Stephen and some time at Torness Power Station, and having a fair bit of experience in oil and gas, I think one of the things that strikes me is that a lot of those tools that we saw Stephen speak about are fairly familiar. So toolbox talks, lessons learned, coaching, leadership, all that kind of stuff we kind of see. But the real thing that struck me when I went along to visit is they've resourced the kind of back end of things. So, you know, when we put lessons learned, or broadly speaking, there is a risk if we put lessons learned in oil and gas, it just goes into a black hole and there's nothing really kind of picked up and driven back out of the organisation to the coalface, so to speak. But they've got 10 guys in a human performance department who are, you know, clearly screening things on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in line with programs and frameworks that they've got in place to really kind of do stuff with this data. And the other thing that really struck me is when you go out into the workplace, you know, the Stephen mentioned that there's similarities between the reactors. They're not similar, they're absolutely identical. Like, I'd still be in there trying to find my way out if I hadn't been with Stephen, because they are absolutely identical. So this point, touch, verbalise is clearly marked in key positions within the door, and you know, so they've resourced and they've got a framework for the back end of gathering and processing this data, and therefore that, for me, kind of fulfills this expectation of the guy at the ground floor, because he knows the system's whirring away and doing productive things in the background. And also the environment encourages good behaviour as well. So I accept the fact it's much easier to keep in good condition because it's not in the middle of the North Sea, but it is absolutely immaculate. You could eat your dinner off the floor, and these point, touch, verbalise things are huge things stuck on the wall where when you stand in a kind of designated space on the floor. So it's not just human performance, they've got the organisational framework and resources and the environmental encouragers, I think, to just, you know, it's not just one thing, there's lots of things that I certainly saw that I thought, that's really quite good, and just little minimal encouragers all the way through the system that help people, you know, reaffirm the expectation, reaffirm the behaviours, reaffirm the frameworks.
One thing, I suppose, just to talk about that will just support the answers we've given is we also have an organisational learning portal, which all our toolbox talks, all our learning briefs, all our just-in-time briefs and all our operational experience is in, and it's a database. Anyone within the fleet can log into it, and based on your role, you can put certain filters into it. So on a weekly basis, you will receive an email with all relevant operational experience, learning briefs, toolbox talks, based on the filtered search. And that's week after week, week after week. And you can apply a lot of filters. You can have no filters and you get 50 or 60 a week. So it's all about, again, the continuous learning. That supports, so we have the database of all our experience that is communicated out on a weekly basis.
Got another question here. Oh.
Hi, Mark Atkinson from ACA Solutions. I think one of the things I know the nuclear industry do very well is or now you've got a license condition on it, license condition 36, organisational change. One of the things in the oil industry here is everyone's reorganising, downsizing and things like that. How when you do have an organisational change, do you focus human behaviours and manage human behaviours during that change? Because I think we can certainly learn from that.
I suppose it's again, we have a process for everything. We have a management of change process. So basically, you will write a paper based on the specific changes you want to embed within your organisation. And step one of that is the human element of it, because it's clear that people, it's not that they're not feared of change, they're feared of being changed. And that's the thing we try and focus on, because there is a lot of upheaval, even as a nuclear industry, we're constantly adapting, like yourself, so, you know what I mean, because we're trying to extend the life of the stations as a fleet. So our management of change process starts with the people, and it's about the impact, potential, positive impact, not so positive impact, and it's discussed with the teams. It's not a case of we have decided to change, and as of Monday, you're here, you're there, organisationally, we're different, we're not. It's very, very collaborative.
So do you put formal arrangements in place to assess the critical points of the change, leadership, changes in leadership, changes in manpower, right down to tasks. So that's all factored into the change, is it?
Yes, it's very, very prescriptive. And we also have a stress and well-being process that on a 12-monthly basis, everybody has a conversation with their leader about, obviously, well, as you said, stress and well-being in the workplace, how they're feeling about, on the back of any organisational changes, about the workload, about fatigue. So it's a continual process which does support the management of change. So it's very, very prescriptive at every level.
Okay, thank you.
I've got another question here.
So I've got a so what question. So you've obviously invested a huge amount of time and money and resource into this. But how do you measure success in terms of either efficiency or safety performance?
Very good question. Right, so there we go. Exactly. So it's done bar. So, as you'll appreciate, we have internal and external regulators, and we are very, as most industry are, very KPI driven. It's also fair to say when it comes to attitudes and behaviours, it's difficult to measure sometimes, and that's why we spoke about coaching and the coaching process, isn't it? I think for me personally, my measure of success for human performance and human factors is engagement. And that might not be something, we have an annual employee engagement survey, so we can use that. Are the workforce happy? We have a nuclear safety culture survey, which is more about, obviously, safety case and from a safety perspective. But to me, it's about the engagement and the willingness to continuously improve and learn. I don't think that really answers the question, maybe substantially if you wanted it to, but...
So I guess, and the elephant in the room is, you're clearly, at least in some cases, a step ahead, of us in oil and gas, and perhaps there's one or two things we can give back. But I can imagine many people in this room saying we would like one of those or 10 of those to do all this analysis, and go up to somebody in a corner office who's very, very busy and go, prove to me it works, and what are the benefits, and it's ultimately the business case that I think. You've been through the journey, you can get the level of engagement, but it's how do we get to the business case that is actually a good thing to invest in all this work. And perhaps it's something that Neil and yourself, Stephen, can work with us on, so we can cascade that back into oil and gas.
So I think that one of the fundamental opportunities that's been missed with human factors and human performance is kind of 50% of what Les touched on. And quite rightly, there's a focus on safety, and that when we look at root cause analysis and causal factors, etc., we can quite easily pin the tail and donkey in terms of the human factors that were directly or indirectly involved in incidents, accidents, organisational failings. But I think the point that Les touches upon that represents a huge opportunity, and perhaps the piece that unlocks this whole thing for organisations just across the piece is that I'm a huge believer that this isn't just talking about safety. Obviously, we don't want Torness to go pop, or anyone else for that matter, but it does genuinely improve organisational efficiency and productivity. And certainly, I spoke about the work that I did at the financial services seminar. They're not interested in killing people or hurting people or blowing things up. They're interested in how it can improve their business, and so they are looking very clearly at So we understand that human factors plays a part, I think, but they are absolutely metriced up the yin yang in terms of technical data points. So, we failed here, it cost us this amount, we had this amount of press, and it cost us this amount of rework in order to get KPMG or PwC back in to fix it. And then it happened again, and it cost us twice as much to get them back in to undo the work that we did in the first place. And so the point I'm trying to make is that human factors, 50% of human factors, I think, it can be geared towards improving the organisation and answering these questions, Les. And I think the answer revolves somewhere along the lines of, you need to look at your technical or your corporate KPIs, so delayed barrels of oil, perhaps, fines in the financial services, unfortunately, patient safety impact in healthcare. But all of these in the background are driven by behaviours, human performance, non-technical skills factors. And I think that perhaps a piece of work is joining the dots in that space so that we can say, well, this amount cost us £2.6 billion, as it did in Barclays in the press for something they did, which was absolutely, to anyone who knew nothing about human factors, was driven by human performance, human behaviour, and a lack of supervision. So I think that story needs to be told, Les, somehow, and joining the dots between the technical and the non-technical metrics, just as well as we do as in the non-technical and technical skills, is definitely worth exploring.
Good. Oh. On you go.
You mentioned in your, I picked up in your presentation, I guess there's two parts to this question actually. You mentioned about competence of individuals, and you mentioned about leadership. So, and then I think you picked up, you've got role profiles within the organisation. So the role profiles, I'm assuming, are related to are connected to the competence element. How far up the organisation, how wide in the organisation are those competence type role profiles prevalent?
Everybody within the fleet, from station director to a technician, has a role training profile and is competency-based structure.
So from a senior management level right the way down the way. And do you think that has a significant impact on behaviours and human factors?
I think it's fair to say that, again, getting back to the technical elements, being technically gifted is one element to being a technician, to being a leader, to being a station director. I think it'd be fair to say that it's only recently, probably past the 5 or 10 years, where we've started to add a level of the human elements to the competence, about the empathy, because having a degree or being technically very competent doesn't make you a good leader. It just means you're technically proficient. So we have assessment centres based on the softer skills. We have interviews, we have assessment centres, putting people in difficult situations, having difficult conversations, crucial conversations, to focus on the non-specific technical competencies we feel we need in a leader.
A question over here.
Hi, I'm Jim Cunningham from Wally Parsons. I'm on the ConocoPhillips project. I was really just understanding how far you've went. We touched on early doors about taking the technical part into the human factors. How far have you went in your industry taking the human factor, as in the individual, the supervisor, into the technical side? So we've spent the last 2 or 3 years developing where we're taking the frontline supervision and bringing them into the technical engineering asset and developing them through scopes of work more around construction than anything else. And over the last 2 years, the success rate on the development from a safety perspective of the guys understanding at the front end, the engineering, the design behind stuff that we're going to implement in maybe a year or 2 years, or maybe even 6 months. For us, it's been a game changer, the improvement in the safety participation, bringing those guys in early doors. And we're sitting at the moment, 4 or 5 of my onshore staff are actually come from the front line. They are now construction engineers within the office, and we're developing that right down to foreman level. So I'm just wondering, is it something you do in the nuclear industry?
It's something we try and do. Okay, there are specific roles where, and let's be fair again, with cost constraints and the nuclear industry as a whole at the minute, we try to recruit in-house as much as we possibly can. And one of the best ways we find, or the biggest positives from that, is taking people from, as we call it, the coal face out of the workshop into an engineering role. Because the likes of myself, I started in the workshop and progressed through. But by doing that, I still have credibility, integrity with the people at the coal face, the people in the workshop. So yes, we absolutely try and do that as much as we can.
Any more questions? Oh, One at the back.
Hi there, guys. You touched earlier on cognitive biases and how the brain takes shortcuts sometimes. Have you done any in-depth analysis, any work on this to identify which common cognitive biases we have, and is Step Change plan to do any of this work?
Sorry, can I ask it again? I couldn't quite hear.
Cognitive biases, you touched on it in mentioning in your speech about how the brain takes shortcuts to get things done. Obviously, there's over 200 identified cognitive biases out there. Have you done any work on analysing these where they tie into your human factors issues, any lapses, incidents? And also, has Step Change taken any of this on board?
So the quick answer to the second part of your question is no, I don't think we've got any plans to look at specific cognitive biases and that underpin I don't know, the primary causal factor, if you like. I think that the question you've asked is a very A-level question, I would say, and that's part of me stalling for time to try and get an answer for you. So I think, in answer to your questions, there are things called behavioural marker systems that allow us to delve down to that level, and behavioural marker frameworks that are things like statistically valid question sets that allow us to hone into specific subsets of error mechanisms, I would say. So shooting from the hip here, one way you would do that is using some form of error taxonomy to say, well, you know, we have got errors in buckets A, B, C, and D, and then use some sort of question set, qualitative, quantitative analysis to say, well, given that the buckets, looking at the items within the buckets are X, Y, and Z, then we can delve down to see what subsets of error mechanism they sit within. But I would say that is. Can I ask you just ask your position and role in things in life?
Sorry, I work for Apache. I do competence and training.
Right. Okay. Cool. And so, understanding specific cognitive biases would help in competence in the sense that you understand where are you going in the direction that understanding specific cognitive biases would allow you a better level of prediction of where people are likely to go wrong.
But also for investigation analysis, people have subsets in their brains of the various biases, confirmation bias, for instance, or hindsight even, these kind of things, they all play a part in human factors lapses. I'm just wondering if we'd recognised if there are any common sets here of biases that lead to these things.
Good question. So, gosh, you're putting us on the rack just now. So, I think that one of the common things I hear all the time about human factors is a lot of people say, "Oh, it's just common sense." And of course, the answer to the fact that it's not common sense is because everyone has their own confirmation biases and own expectancy biases. Confirmation bias and expectancy bias being the kind of forward-looking thing, confirmation bias looking rearward, if you like. And I think that depends on a huge amount of factors. It depends on educational, it depends on experience, it depends on qualification, and you know, primacy and recency also comes into that. So, you know, our decisions can be affected on how our walk was from, you know, those blooming impossible to use payment machines in the car park to here can generate a level of frustration that would impact our decision and things at the time. I think the kind of high level to your question is that there's no real silver bullet for any of this stuff. There's just thousands of brass ones. And I think that using the tool, going back to the tool, using the tools that Stephen's talked us about, and through a high level of workforce engagement, we can start to paint a picture that starts to outline the confirmation and expectancy biases you would expect to see within your department, your function, your organisation. And only then, and when that work has been done, could you start to look to drill down to the kind of the very specific trigger factors or biases that you're maybe expecting to see. I think that's a bit of a off-the-hip answer, but I think it's a very detailed question that would rely on a lot of factors that would be specific to the organisation that you're working in.
So I'm not going to talk anything about confirmation bias because I know absolutely nothing about it, as I'm sure everybody in the room will know. But the reality is that from what step change is beginning to think about is actually performance influencing factors. So we have had quite, for a long period of time, both within HSE and within step change. If you go back to the first steps, it's in the back of the book in terms of, or actually in the presenter's pack. And there's sort of a couple of dozen things, both at a sort of industry, organisational and individual level, and sort of that seems to have an increasing level of importance in terms of what predicting an outcome or human error is. And we are currently, and Emily and I have already been speaking to RGU about perhaps revisiting the OIM survey step change did back in 96, 97, to look at the threat and error model around these performance entering factors. And it's down to things we're currently managing, how people feel, what's the kind of conditions of employment, and all sorts of things that might give us a sense of where are we going to get hurt, or where are we going to hurt people next. And that's perhaps it's a more proactive way for us, certainly in step change, to work on the left-hand side to say, these are the conditions we're exposing our people to, and can we begin to put in mitigations in advance of something coming up. So it's really, really early, but we do think there's something in those performance influence factors that are available that you can begin to use to say, do these conditions exist in our organisation, and what's the consequence of that for our people at a work site. So hopefully at least by this next year we'll have some data, but importantly you can go and pull down the information today and actually do a quick self-assessment, and you'll very soon go, yeah, we've got 5 or 6 of those will be in the red without any shadow of a doubt at any organisation.
I'll just say that I'm very impressed with that question, though. Genuinely, the fact that someone's asked a question as detailed as that kind of makes me feel a bit warm and fuzzy in terms of the human factors things, and like in a non-weird way.
Any other questions? Oh.
Hi, I'm Simon Burrows, HSEQ at Maersk Training. I'm just wondering where you get to a control measure of point, touch, feel rather than an engineering solution. To have all the equipment looking exactly the same, I'm picturing myself in a room trying to get my colleagues to point, touch, feel, and I don't think I'd win it. Sorry, verbalise, not feel, sorry.
So I'll have a quick stab at that again. Stephen knows infinitely more about this than I do, but I can't stress enough that how identical these places look, and it doesn't take a huge amount of coaching or discussion or education to say that, look, guys, if you're going to be under pressure, perceived or otherwise, you're going to have 1,000,001 things on your mind, and you're going to walk into this room, and you are automatically within an error-prone environment. So, they are absolutely identical, and not just to the shape and the doors that you go into, but the way that the internals are laid out, and to the cabinets, and the example that we looked at, it is absolutely the same. And I guess you're dealing with you talked about engineering solutions. The engineering solutions were put in place 50 years ago, so we're trying to catch up and trying to there's no way that there's an engineering solution that will be the cost effective to kind of redesign these things. So what you're left with human performance, human factors. And certainly from an outsider looking in, it wouldn't take a huge amount of explanation to say, look guys, you are highly likely to make some mistakes here because it's just so identical.
Yeah, I think it's picking up on what Neil just said. It's this station was built in 1980, so I think it's clear human factors or human performance was never considered. It was just the right thing to do at the time. So a lot of it, let's be honest, with a business, it comes down to investment. So it is easier and more proactive for us to embed expectations from a human performance perspective than to go and repaint or relabel or put other more stringent barriers in place. We do discuss it, we are talking about it, but currently that's the control we have, and that's why, and we have had some near misses in the past, which add a lot of relevance and context to getting it right. So that was what helped us embed the expectation. But is it ideal? No, it's not. Because I said before, you wouldn't know which room you were in if you didn't know. So basically, at this current point, that's what we've got, and that's the expectation we've got.
Okay. I'll just close with one final question before we break for coffee. In your opinion, how do you make human factors accessible to the person at the pipework, to the person sitting in the boardroom?
I would say you design a tool that's online that's got lots of question sets.
Fantastic answer, Neil.
But joking aside, I think that there's, I think that is one of the ways. I think I genuinely believe that it's a really good tool, so I'll take the opportunity to implore you to go away and use it again. And the other side of it, Emily, I think just comes down to effort, dedication, and resourcing it to a certain extent. You know, I don't think, from a personal point of view, I spend a lot of time speaking to a lot of people about human factors, and generally, to varying degrees, people get it. But it comes down to the cost and the resource of just actually driving it forward. You know, you speak to someone about an engineering design solution or something, they'll get an engineer to have a look at it, they'll go and speak to a fab shop to get it built, and you know, they'll put the time and effort and resource into it. And you know, there's no, to kind of do myself a disservice here, but there's no real rocket science to what we're trying to achieve here. I think that, especially at this level, relatively early human factors engagement and the huge strides that we can take and benefit our organisations, I think that we need to engage with it, and I think that we need to apply some level of resource, and which clearly some individuals are doing with safety coaches and the like. But I think at this stage it is as simple as making people aware of the tools that are available to them, and I think this is one of the best ones that's out there. I genuinely mean that. And then applying some resource. So for those of the audience that didn't put their hands up, please just go away and have a look at it, and if it's not engaging, and if it's not accessible, let us know and we'll make it better.
I think it's actually a very good question, and it's a question that a lot of organisations have had trouble with, and we have had trouble with, because in times gone past we've been trying to help people and support people by trying to instill the value of human performance in day-to-day activities, and we focus on, rightly or wrongly, about instances around the fleet, our fleet, but around EDF in general, where unfortunately there's been fatalities. And the question you get always asked is, well, no one's died in the UK, so why is it important to us? But the point is, it's all about it's about relevance and context, and it's value from a safety perspective more than a financial perspective. And these tools, when applied correctly and used correctly, ensures everybody has a good day, everybody goes home safe. And it is a difficult question to answer, because people have their own views on it, and some have a graded approach to the value of human performance. So it's within the sort of infinite game, aren't we? This is constant, and it's continual, and it's about constantly revising strategies and constantly learning, obviously. And we've now rolled out fundamentals, so fundamental behaviours like behavioural markers for maintenance and operations, which are aligned around human performance. So it's like a next evolution. So it's just about constantly evolving and constantly refreshing. So we have obviously initial training, continuing training. We have role modelling is another key to it. And I've seen it myself. You could spend an hour in a classroom helping people understand human performance and the benefits of it. They walk out the classroom, see a person in a leadership role who's not role modelling our expectations for human performance, and all your work's undermined straight away. Why should I if he's not? Or why should I if she's not? So it's got to be top to bottom. You've got to advocate it and role model it. And it's, as I say, it's the infinite game, it's continuous.
On that note, we have now finished the first half of our session, so please join me in thanking Stephen and Neil for their input.